WBUR Podcast, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Beth, whenever we talk with you, it means we're about to get into some real nitty-gritty. But I love these conversations with you because you always talk to us in a way that simplifies things to help us understand. And dare I say, it's even a little fun. I like talking to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So with that, you just wrapped up an investigative report on the Department of Public Utilities and the not so great job that they're doing of overseeing the MBTA. Before we get into that, though, tell us about the DPU and what it has to do with the MBTA.
So the DPU, as you might know, spends most of their time regulating gas and electric companies and water companies. But one of their jobs is also to oversee the safety of the MBTA.
Mm-hmm.
For years, they've had kind of a small state budget, it turns out, and really not enough expertise or enough people to do that job. But it is something they are responsible for, and they answer to the feds on this.
Okay. Now, I'm sure as folks are aware, the MBTA has had a lot of issues concerning safety. Is it safe to say that the DPU should be on the hook for some of these safety incidents as well?
Yeah, and you might remember, and your listeners might remember, that as of last summer, they were really getting a hard time publicly for the first time because the feds called them out for not doing their job overseeing the T. You might remember Senator Warren.
Yeah,
had a hearing in Boston in the fall, and she had some pretty choice words for them.
It is your job to make sure that the MBTA is doing its job, and you are failing.
What were you looking for when you started reporting this, and what did you end up finding?
So after the hearings and after that big report came out from the Federal Transit Administration last summer, we started asking for public records from the DPU because we thought, well, let's find out what they actually do.
Yeah.
What do they literally do? And so we were asked for all kinds of records related to, do you audit them? Do you review them? Do you investigate them? And we found out that there were a lot of records, but they're actually pretty hard to get. And it took quite a while to get the stuff we did get. Something that really stood out to us when we finally got it was a spreadsheet of all the investigations at the T that are supposed to take place when there's fires and collisions and near misses. And they're supposed to turn in an investigative report to the DPU within 60 days. Well, what we found out in this bright column of red on this spreadsheet is that most of the open investigations, those reports were months late. What that means is the DPU is not using its enforcement authority to require the T to turn in its investigative reports.
To put that into journalism terms, they are severely missing their deadlines.
Correct.
So what does that mean? What does that say? Why is that such a big deal?
Absolutely. So one of the reasons it's a big deal is obviously because you need to keep riders safe. And getting these investigations done is critical because then the DPU has to do its own independent analysis of those reports. And you've got to get the fixes done at the T. So all these things get delayed. When we brought our findings to the FTA, here's what Joseph DiLorenzo, the chief safety officer, had to say about the late reports.
In their role as regulator, they need to make sure that they get the reports and they get them on time and they're not continually extending those things.
Who oversees the DPU?
Fair question. The federal program is that every state has to have an oversight agency looking over their transit systems.
Right.
So it's a federal program, but the state actually appoints it.
Okay.
So Massachusetts decided that the DPU was the best agency here to oversee the T.
So is anyone who's overseeing the DPU from Massachusetts aware of these, severe lag times in investigations?
I would say no one really knew that. I think the FTA started to figure it out because they do 3-year audits and started to see back as far back as 2019 that these things were late.
So basically the problem here sounds like the DPU is just severely understaffed for this type of work, right? Was that the case when they were assigned the oversight duties in the first place? Like, was the state aware of the DPU's current condition?
If you go back to like the 90s, the T wasn't in nearly this bad condition, right? Because things got worse over the years. So it kind of snuck up on everybody that there were only about 6 people at the DPU in charge of overseeing things at the T. When you've got
people to oversee a transit agency that serves the Boston metro region.
That's right. I mean, last year alone, there were more than 100 investigations at the T from safety incidents that they then had to look into, and they only had 6 people.
Unreal. So is the DPU doing anything to add staff and resources?
Well, the DPU says that they are trying to staff up.
Okay.
Essentially roughly doubling the staff, and, they brought in some consultants to help, and they need a new transit safety chief themselves. But, at these hearings last year, leaders from the DPU testified that hardly anyone had transit experience in the group. So they have a ton of work to do.
How does that even happen? That's a serious question. Like, how does that even happen to where you're the oversight agency for one of the biggest transit agencies in the country, but your staff does not have transit experience? How are you even qualified to do that job?
Here's where it goes to the state. The DPU has 3 chair people who oversee everything. Now, if you were running the state, you might make sure that one of those 3 people has transit experience.
Yeah.
The state has not done that. Everybody kind of comes from the gas and energy world, and then they've got to learn on the job how to deal with MBTA trains catching on fire.
Oof. So is it safe to say that with all the things that have gone on with the T, that perhaps the criticism that it gets is just a little bit unfair because it's not totally on them? There's something much larger here that I feel like this whole investigation is getting at.
Well, the T would tell you this themselves, and transit experts would tell you it is certainly the T's responsibility to be safe, and the heads of the T. And Carmen Bianco, who's a former New York City transit chief who's done oversight work on the T in the past, he says the key is you need an independent overseer to keep your transit system safe.
You're not there to be in bed with each other. You're there to be independent of each other. And then you need to be tracking all the results of those investigations so that you make sure people are following through on the things you committed to.
This is a guy who ran the New York City transit system, so.
Yeah. Wow. So what can be done about this? Like, what are the options to address the situation?
So, as you know, the situation with the T is pretty critical right now, right? I mean, there have been fires and derailments and all kinds of things, and people are pretty concerned about the safety of the T.
Yeah.
We have a new governor now, and Governor Healy has said that she's going to appoint a new transit safety chief who's going to review the T and also review the DPU's role. And at the same time, some state lawmakers put out a report just last week actually recommending that a new agency be created and saying the DPU has shown that it's not capable of doing this role.
So they propose creating a new agency? That sounds like a big task. What would go into all of that?
Well, that's right. There are a lot of people who say, wait a minute, creating a new agency, that's a whole other ball of wax, right? And not a simple thing and could really take a lot of time. So the state's in a little bit of a tough spot, right? You got to try to fix an agency that hasn't managed to fix itself in many years, or create something completely new at a moment, when it's pretty urgent to fix the problems at the T.
Okay, so what's next? I mean, what will you be looking out for? Is there any motion to address these things?
What's next is the DPU has got to hurry up and hire more people and hire some good people. Go outside the market. I mean, go find some good transit people and bring them in and get them up to speed. The state needs to pay attention. The feds need to make sure that the DPU, not check in 3 years, but make sure that they do their job. And in the meantime, state lawmakers and the governor's office are going to be looking at, can the DPU do it, or do they need to create some other body to oversee this.
Wow. Beth, you blew my mind with this, and I'm really like dumbfounded over here. Like, wow. But thank you so much for sharing this story with us. I am sure folks will be very, very interested to hear this. So thank you.
Good to talk to you, Daryl.
That's WBUR Senior Investigative Reporter Beth Healy. Now don't go just yet. Stick around because we have a little something extra for you today, right after the break.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, folks, it's time for another installment of Common Curates, where we share with you some of the things we've been enjoying from the region lately. Let's start with our producers.
I'm Caitlin Harrop. I'm a producer on The Common, and my Common Curates pick is a bar with a really good mocktail option. And one of my favorites is Back Bar in Somerville. It's a speakeasy-style bar, so sometimes there's a little bit of a line to get in, but it's always worth it. They have a great regular cocktail menu, and every time I've gone, they've also had really great mocktail options. So you can enjoy no matter how you like to enjoy your beverages.
Hey, Franny Monahan here. I'm also a producer for The Common, and my Common Curates pick this week I reluctantly share just because there's always a wait for this place, but it's Spring Shabu Shabu in Lower Alston. It's like a typical hot pot place. The thing that sets it apart for me, though, is that all of the non-meat ingredients are served buffet style, so you can really go and get your money's worth eating veggies and tofu and noodles. And also that matcha ice cream is top tier. So yeah, Spring Shabu Shabu.
Hey, it's executive producer Ben Brock Johnson. My Common Curates is to sit at the bar at Sarma. You maybe know the excellent Middle Eastern food hotspot Sarma in Somerville, and maybe you know resis there can be tough. Don't get a resi. If it's you and a friend, show up, grab a drink by the window, wait for spots on the big bar to open up. Corner spot for the win. You can sidle up, get your meze without a resi.
And finally, my Common Curates pick is a memoir called Instead We Became Evil, a true story of survival and perseverance. It's a memoir from Danish rapper Sleeman, co-written by Boston's own Dart Adams. This book is interesting because it's primarily set in Denmark and takes you through what it's like to be an immigrant in a country that doesn't fully accept you and the consequences of that. It's a reminder that the struggle is global, so I highly suggest you check it out. And I gotta do a shameless plug here. I'll be talking with Sleeman and Dart about the book on Wednesday, January 25th at WBUR's City Space. Come through. It's going to be a good, insightful time. Just head on over to WBUR.org/cityspace and cop your tickets. And that's it for today, folks. Hit us up with your recommendations on either Twitter or Instagram at WBUR The Common or by email at thecommon@WBUR.org. We always, always, always love to hear from you. And with that, I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.